that we're doing. And if you are prepping for that, then you're going to have to learn to take some responsibility in the overall zest for how fast can we get this completed. And I've got to pull more. I want my question the next time Link sits with us to just pop their heads open with, gracious, that's right. That means this, and that means that, and that means this. Because you're helping the parts of the puzzle that you're filling in the blanks on will be less significant and more. So that we won't feel compelled to always be to have to wait for you and then to go pull in the next step and come and deliver it to you. Yeah, that's the only difference.
Well, that's part of the key, too, that I realized last night. In the vehicle thinking or something, when you brought up that phrase that we say, I want to complete this task as quickly as possible. It's been so long that thought of I want to equate the vehicle as I want to get this over with. And I've been trying so hard to get to the vehicle.
Okay, but it wasn't appropriate. It's just like if we had told you prior to yesterday, to participate more in the questions that we will bring the answers to, your questions would have been beneath you. Your questions would have been beneath the kind of questions that we wanted to raise in order to have new steps.
Well, you did tell us that, right? I mean, in a sense, I feel like this lesson last night, you previewed a little bit because you were asking us, I think a meeting tape or two ago, to say, we want your questions to pull out the pieces.
Yes, but knowing that, then I don't see what you're talking about. I don't see if that's computed in your head, because then that would mean then it's finally time for me to without any guilt, to feel as strongly as I may have felt previously on how quickly can I accomplish this task.
Well, that's what I needed to say to it that I had. It's okay to feel that.
Yes, but you feel it in a different way.
Right.
You're feeling it in a more mature way. Up until now, it was, boy, I want to get this over with fast. Now it's different. You want to get it over more quickly because you want the task to be completed. Then I can guarantee you, including myself, that once this task is over, we're going to wish it was not over. You want to buy it once. Simply because you will be lost without a special task from the chief. Because
it'll be like the day after Christmas.
You have all of this attention directed at you. In other words, you don't know how much attention you have directed at you. And once it's taken away, it's like Doe said, it'll be the day after Christmas, and you mean it's over? Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I don't feel like you'll have feelings like that. But I know that I have a task in the next level. I know Doe has one, and I feel like it's a fairly good task, and it keeps me very active. But I also know that this task is a specialized task. It is part of the task that I do. And in other words, it's a derivative from the task that I do in the next level. And so it was almost, it was part of my task to come do this task. You know what I mean? It's like a position in the task. Now, when I go back, I won't be in the same position, and this won't probably come up again for me because it will be whoever comes up and takes steps into where I was. You follow that? And so I will go to something else, but I will still have the memory in my computer at this task. And there is some joy in the task, even though we jokingly say, going to change a lot of it, and so on. It's just really joking. It's true. We get tired of the garden here because we see some of the vehicles that are growing so badly, and we wonder why are we going through all of this if they're turning out to be so bad. And then we see some good invariably that they are doing, and it probably balances out to be equal. But getting back to what I said, I know that, Aunt Sody, when you say, I want to complete the task, that your heart is in a different place when you say it than what you said from the very beginning when the vehicle was talking.
I don't think you should let your vehicle, let your reasoning power, let discouragement come in this way, or think, well, this is what I've been doing, or I thought that was, don't let that kind of questioning. In other words, if it isn't clear to you, or if it's the least bit of a negative to you in any way, then you've got to say, well, it's going to clarify, and I'll see that this is the right time, because I feel like it did bring in some heaviness to you. And it was very apparent to us, and you weren't alone. And but you can't let, when we are talking to you about a phase, you can't let your vehicle start, or your memory of how you were looking at something, cause conflict and say, well, that I don't see how that jives, or how does that differ from, or isn't that what I've been doing, or see, because if you keep listening and you keep a positive attitude toward it, you're going to see that there's a more appropriateness to it now. Or even, let's say that even if, well, first of all, you just don't listen to the thoughts that would have you question it. Because you're saying, well, then it's time. Or you might even say, well, I think I've been pulling like that, but maybe my pulling has not been as adequate as what they're now talking about. It hasn't been as significant as what they're now talking about. Because we don't know how, there aren't enough words in our vocabulary to give you the right word. In other words, how many times since you've been in this classroom have we used the same word for different meanings? Many stratas along the way. And we didn't know what other words to do. And yet we knew that this strata didn't even jive with this strata at all. But we came back and said the same thing to you. And you could have said, well, that's what I heard a year ago. Do you see what we're saying? And sure, that is what you heard if you're listening to the words. But it's not what our mind was sending. So you don't want to I'm sorry, got distracted.
I think you understand.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk to you again.
You all, turn the tape off.
You all had your schedule disrupted last evening, and I don't know if you all were able to take a nap today. And you've been working all day, and we don't want to make this debate that you can't get back on schedule and start the new year off with a bang.
I just had a question about something Coyote talked about, and I just wondered if I could ask you anything about that. You described the feeling in some words and I saw several heads nod, and this vehicle had experienced a feeling at an early age that it never managed to describe in words, but when he said it, in the words he put it in, it immediately recognized it, and even the feeling came back, which it hadn't felt he wasn't actually literally feeling it, but enough of a memory of it, that it was an unpleasant feeling, and it always seemed to have some significance, and the vehicle would wake up, it wouldn't wake up screaming or anything, something that seemed important, but I just thought maybe it had to do with our vehicles being examined.
What are you referring to?
Well, the way his words were that things would get huge and then tiny, and that's everybody, it's all in these heads now. And to me, I described it more like a thickness or almost a taste, but it wasn't a taste. And
things would get big and then tiny.
Not just, like Glenody also said right after that, made me realize that's what it was too, not just me, like a being, and anything that my senses, the senses of the vehicle, even the fingertips were touching, if it was on the pillow, that pillow would all of a sudden be minuscule, and then all of a sudden huge. And the feeling was that I was going through the same thing. It was just a horrifying kind of experience.
And you weren't in drugs at the time.
Oh, no.
When you were very young? Was this when you were very young?
Yeah.
Was it when you were very young?
No.
It was later?
It happened to me later a little bit, but I was able to control it a little.
I had it frequently. It was a special thought.
That's understood.
Well, it was a little different in that I would, sometimes in dreams, sometimes awake, I would have images in my mind. It was a black, irregular shape that was suddenly huge, and then it was suddenly tiny, and it was suddenly huge, and it was suddenly tiny. And, you know, it was like going back and forth like a vibration. It was strange. And, you know, I always thought it was something significant, but I never could.
You too? You too? What happened to you? You too had that? Wonder what that was. You too?
Maybe it was the implant.
The implant, Bob said. Okay.
What is
I guess it was the meeting before last, we were talking about, this would be our first experience of a sustained effort in a human vehicle, something like that, and then they turned the tape over. And there was nothing more on the tape, and I didn't really get a clear picture of what you were, I mean, I understand those words, but I don't seem to clearly know if
I don't know
in the
what that
next
means.
level, so the first time we would experience sustained pulling,
But in a human vehicle, I don't understand.
In dense environment.
well, anyway, the part
Yes, yes, I do know what we meant.
we went on quite a bit, and I remember at the time it struck me as really important, but there was nothing on the tape, and I couldn't really remember what you said.
What was it, Alan?
Well, I believe you were talking about the mind being in this environment. The first time I've had to experience a sustained effort applied to keeping the vehicle under control, because in the next level it just comes naturally.
That's right. That's what we were talking about. In other words, we were. Do you understand that, Melody?
Well, I thought they
The
were
kind
talking
of
about
feeling, we were talking about the kind of feeling when you're pulling, it's an unconscious, non-verbalized, strong desire to move very quickly and to do your task very quickly and very, very well. And it's sustained in the next level. It hangs on. It's a part of the mechanism. That's a perfectly natural mechanism. It is not a natural mechanism for the human vehicle. And we're saying that now that you're, and it's greater than you have experienced to this point, what we're expecting of you now. It's greater than what you have experienced in pulling to this point. We want enough mind on inside the vehicle, or on this side of the vehicle, on the conscious side of the vehicle, that you can sustain it no matter what you're doing, whether it's your autocraft task or whatever it is, that you will have that feeling of pulling very, very hard to see how fast you can move, how high you can stay, how much of a next level overview you can have of your vehicle and those around you. And by sustaining it, when you do sustain it, you can't slip into ugliness. You can't slip into human ways when you are sustaining it. And we've got to learn to sustain it, because we still have accidents where people do things and then realize that their mind wasn't in enough, and they let their vehicle get away with things they would say or things they would do or feel, and then regret it. And we've got to, no matter what the vehicle is vibrating, we've got to get the mind in strong enough to handle the vehicle under whatever conditions the vehicle is doing at the time, instead of retreating. Now, there might be times when, well, I don't know if I can explain that. I'll talk to you about that. But do you understand the kind of sustained pulling we're talking about? See the words we're saying now, do they mean something new to you?
I think I understand. I wanted to be sure that happened in the next level all the time, that it wasn't just here, and that I probably already knew, that my mind knows how to do that already.
That's right.
It just hasn't done it here.
That's right. Hasn't come strong enough into the consciousness of this vehicle to sustain it. But it knows how to do it all the time
Is it
in the next level.
Is it uncomfortable in the next level to do?
No.
It's only because you're natural.
It's only uncomfortable for the vehicle. Because it gives the vehicle much less opportunity to express itself or to feel things or to feel like it's alive.
The other day, we talked to you about bringing more mind in order to have more questions. You remember that? And let's say that before we said that if you do everything we ask you to do, like follow procedures and try to handle every circumstance the best way you can, the way a member of the next level would do it, that you automatically bring more mind in, okay? And then the other day we said to you, we want you to come up with questions, go beyond that in order to bring more mind in.
We want the pulling to start doing some of the work that Lynx has been doing.
Right. And now let's say that your vehicle, all of a sudden you begin to feel like, I thought that if I did everything this way, that I would bring more mind in automatically. Now you're coming up with something else to do. In a sense, when your vehicle begins to think that way, that is your vehicle thinking that way. It is not your mind, which means that you weren't using your next level mind, which means that you need to
certainly not at that moment that it would express that.
Which means that you have to do this other task in order to bring more mind in. So evidently it was not enough by doing that. You see what I'm saying? And this is why the next level gave you this other method. Can you follow that? Because it comes from a couple of different directions. And in other words, the monitors we talked about are your mind, our minds, our monitors, whatever you want to call it. Whoever it is, whoever's looking out for us, whoever is giving us the lessons to give to you, have evaluated things and have realized that that isn't enough under these circumstances at this time. And so they added this to it now. You know that all along we have figured out all kinds, not we have, but our next level mind, our guidance, has figured out methods to help you bring in more mind in order for you to do your task, right? From way back when we put perimeters around the campground. That wasn't just to give you something to do, it was to bring in a remembrance to make you feel like a member of the next level. From the little colors that we put on your jumpsuits, from the jumpsuits that you wore, from the bags on your head, from the paper bags to the silver hood, everything was used to help bring in that memory or bring in that mind so that you would have a better control of the vehicle. Now, this step may have given some of you trouble. It may have confused you because you thought, here I was doing the best I could, and now you come up and say that I wasn't, which wasn't so. It wasn't that you weren't doing your best. It was that that was not a good method. We needed a better method. You understand that? Everybody?
I want to be sure I got understand. Say, for example, like sometimes when this vehicle is giving me trouble and I lose control of it, I can feel the mind slipping out. It's like the voice of my next level mind that keeps telling the machinery what to do. It starts getting fainter and fainter and fainter. And it has frustrated me a lot to not know what I could do to make the voice get louder instead of softer at the time when I need it most. Are you saying that this step will help to overcome that problem?
No, because what you have to do when you hear the voice get lower, smaller, it's got to ring a bell in your head that your vehicle is vibrating stronger. And you've got to, with that little weak voice, you've got to calm down the vehicle. You know what I mean? It's like if you're resting in your bunk at night and your vehicle's all keyed up, and if you start saying relax, 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 and the vehicle just, over a period of time, it'll just begin to relax, but you might have to hit it on the head to make it relax. And this is what you have to do when you just hear that little voice. What you've got to realize is when you hear that little voice, is that you've got to make it stronger and get that vehicle toned down or calmed down or whatever it is. You don't want to get so far in the pit of the stomach like in The Exorcist, where you holler help in your abdomen. But that when you begin to feel your mind regress, which means that when you begin to start having all the thoughts of the world, just like what we talked about when we were headed into that mountain, what you want to do is let it make you aware, let it be a bell that rings, and you say, wow, get out of here, and stop the thoughts immediately, and get your mind back in. It takes very little effort to get your mind back in, really. Once you start doing it, it might be a little difficult right at first, but if you keep on doing it, it'll get stronger and stronger and stronger, and the vehicle will become more relaxed. But what you want to be aware of mostly is when the first thoughts that come in that could cause your mind to regress. Because there's something that you're not doing if you don't stop it. Does that make sense? In other words, you want to be aware, I know this vehicle. I know what causes it to have trouble. And if I let those thoughts come in further than the first little boing, then I'm in trouble, and I don't want that trouble. So consequently, when I first began to hear the phone, the bee on the boing, I try to stop it. And this is how keen you want to become, because none of you need the suffering that goes with it. We don't like to see you have that problem.
Now, the important thing is the application that you give to stop it. Now, even like I feel like sometimes, and this may be hard to understand now, what Tita stopped me. If I'm wrong, but the reason I say the important thing is the application. I feel like sometimes when I'm experiencing something, that I know what I must do is start applying the effort to not let it go any further. Now, if it continues to go further, then I have to apply more effort. And it may continue to go further, and I have to apply more effort. Now, there's something altogether different than that, different from that, if I am not applying any effort, and it goes further. Do you follow the difference? Like, sometimes I feel like, to returning to one of the basic reasons you're here, developing strength, sometimes I feel like the next level, I don't know if this is true in your circumstance, but I feel like in my circumstance, sometimes the next level will, in spite of my effort, continue to give me the problem. In order to make my effort increase, if you can understand that. Because it's the application of my refusal. It's almost like, let's say that something's happening and I try to stop it. And I think I'm trying the best that I know how to try to stop it. And it continues to happen. And I try to stop it. And I try to stop it. After that has happened to me a number of times, I almost feel like at times they have tried to do me a favor by building muscle. Do you follow that? Now, I don't build any muscle if I permit it to increase. No muscle is built. Because I have to have zero permissiveness every step of the way for any muscle to be built. Can you understand that? It's zero permissiveness. But sometimes it's like they're almost saying, well, what are you going to do if I don't let it stop in spite of your effort? To test me to see if I will do anything. And they know I'm not going to do anything. Do you see what I'm saying? And in a sense, that's maybe the way it can verbalize. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because that's not really what's going on, but it's almost as if to say, well, what are you going to do if your effort doesn't seem to stop? And no matter how much effort, it's going to stay until you think there's no more effort to apply. And then usually about that point, it begins to let up when there's no more effort to apply. And I think sometimes in this task that you're doing, you're tested for your tensile strength. You're tested to see, well, what are you going to do? You know, can you take it? How much can you take? Do you really want strength, or do you want to give in? Do you want? Are you willing to resist? Now, see, here again, I don't even know if it's fair for me to talk to you about this, because I know that I'm tied to you like you're tied to the world. And I know that at times the way this mechanism works, that several of you all might be for a sustained period dealing with something, and I catch it, and it's almost like at times I catch it in a way to relieve you of it, if you can understand that. And yet I don't mind doing it. I don't mind anything that I have to deal with. Don't misunderstand. I really don't mind it. And I hope you don't mind what you have to deal with, because I like the process of growth. And do you like the process of growth? You see, that's the question. Do you like it, or do you have a limit, a subconscious limit, that I can take only so much applied effort and resistance? You see what I'm saying? So it's the application, it's the constant application that is important for you, that is going to give you strength. And the knowing also, because I feel like I know with confidence, and I know that the confidence isn't false. And I'm not asking you to state such a thing, But I know that there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, there's nothing that I would do, no matter how hard they push me, or no matter how hard this task pushes me, that I'm not going to break. That my tensile strength I'm going to give when there's no giving left to give. Do you follow that? It's whatever's there. That's all there is. But that doesn't mean that's all there is, and then it's this. It means that's all there is goes all the way. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. 6 o'clock. Bye-bye. Sure.
We might be preparing to do a task like yours. The thought came into my mind, if that meant that, like, if the team moved on to another task, and Joe moved into a task similar to yours, and we moved into a task similar like Joe's, to where we might even, well, like if we did a task like yours, would we be with an older member doing the task, and could it even be Joe?
Well, it depends, I would think, don't you? In other words, you would say?
I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, it would depend upon what the task is. Like, let's take Jesus, for instance. He didn't have an older member in the physical body with him. However, he did have contact with an older member. And,
But we also felt like his genes were only 50% primitive.
right. In other words, he had more mind into his vehicle for some reason or other. He had more ability to do things, which he came with his own little bag of tools to do his task. And we came with very little tools, other than just the ability to be awake enough to help you all with your mind and do your task. Now, if it's a task like that would require only one person, then you would always have contact with an older member. You would never, I don't think, be by yourself. And but then, if it's on this garden, it may not require another task like this, but it may be something else. It might be a Messiah that comes, to reign over this garden. You know what I mean? What do you say?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know. I have to think about it. Because, like on Jesus' task, it's puzzled us. We haven't really thought about it that much. We haven't figured out what we really think, and we don't know how close it would be. Whether or not, like if Jesus took occupancy of that vehicle at birth, then we feel like it. And this also is an update from what we've said some time ago. We feel like it was, in a sense, a virgin birth, because it was probably an artificial insemination, and was probably the counterpart was much more advanced than Mary. In other words, what was, that might be what they call the Holy Spirit in the writings, because according to the scriptures, it was the Holy Spirit that got Mary pregnant. And even though they don't say it that way, but that's what it adds up to. But if that's the case, then like T said, Jesus had a better tool relationship as being by himself. With the older members, or with the next level, or with the spacecraft, or he had a frequent, after he was awakened, he had frequent times with them that aren't recorded, that we know nothing about, Because if it had been recorded, it could have caused interference for that. It might be right at the end he finally let a couple of people in on it, you know, in on the fact that he was visiting with older members, which he did, and they witnessed it. But that doesn't mean it was the only time he visited with older members. You follow what we're saying? So we don't know what the story is, but if you all, if two came, or I tell you, we don't feel like it's, I don't feel like it's really fair to speculate on the question, because each experiment that the next level would design, I think, would be out of our ballpark to anticipate. And it's like they're going to learn a lot from this experiment, and we don't know, even if somebody would come again, like in this civilization, if it would be necessary for anybody to come again in the way that you have come here and that we have come here. We don't know. But, well, that's all I know to say on it.
Well, now, we're talking about this garden. I don't know if you were talking about only this garden, but any garden. And the answer to your question would be, I don't think you would ever come on a task like this alone.
I think there'll be some association with, and I don't even know if this is accurate, but whether or not we will have an association with you to a degree on further tasks, whatever those tasks may be. We don't know what, he doesn't know what her next assignments might be. I don't know what my next assignments might be. We, believe it or not, we've thought about it a little bit at times, because we've had certain indications of what it might be, but we don't feel like we can discuss that.
We can't prove it.
And we certainly wouldn't be any element of proof.
You know, what makes sense, though, in my estimation, you wouldn't have a crew flit from one creative garden to another. In other words, what you start, you usually follow through. And in my mind, I think we're all associated with this garden from the very beginning, if you can understand it. And again, we have no proof of that, but other than, and this is just speculation, but if you all were representatives from each department in the next level that was working with this garden, then it makes sense that you would go back and still work with this garden. And if there are other tasks to do, whether it's exactly what we're doing now, I don't think it's very likely it will be exactly the same, because like Doe said, what we learn from this task will determine what the next step is. And I feel certain that there will be others coming to this garden again, because there are many other steps that this garden has to go through in order to become what the next level wants it to become. So there should be plenty of other tasks for you all to do. And whether or not we will be involved in it as closely as we are now, we don't know, because we're not sure what our position is in the next level, and whether or not the next level requires certain types of individuals to come and do a task like this under these circumstances. Can you follow that? In other words, it may be characteristic of our task. Now we will get further away from this, of doing this, by doing this task. But we don't know what the next step that we move to will require of us. It does, if somebody will move in to our position, you see what I'm saying?
Equivalent.
It's a step up type thing, you know, and so it's that's about the only way I can see it. In other words, as you qualify according to the effort that you exert to get experience, get strength. Well, that's about all there is to it, your effort. Then you all have the opportunity. It isn't limited. Let's say they don't have just one garden, and all of you have to compete for that one task. It isn't like that. You all can have the opportunity, and this is the way I feel. You know that?
Mm-hmm.
That you all have the opportunity to do something like this if you want to do it. If not this, something else. Because, well, the way I see it, you all have a pretty neat task with whatever you want to, with what you do in the next level. And you do have a strong responsibility toward the human kingdom in making sure that it grows in the right direction.
You know, we don't know that some of you, even when you were awakening, and we don't even know by the vehicular assignments that you got, whether there was some relationship to some of the work you might have been doing, or in some of the laboratories that you might have been serving in the next level before coming on this task. Because we think, like, for example, in the human kingdom on this globe, there are lots of grades going on at the same time. And there are lots of even different schools that are almost the same grade. Just like you have different colleges that still have freshmen and sophomores, there are different schools that have very close to the same grade, even though if you gave them testing, there'd probably be a certain level of difference in the testing from one to the next. But also, there's a lot of next-level experimentation going on with earlier life forms. And we don't know if some of you didn't have relationship with labs that were more involved with the trees or the animals or the... we don't know things like that. We tell you an interesting thing that we do recognize. Fire ants in particular. Interesting thing that we do recognize is that we used to innocently think that most of the deficiencies and diseases that were inappropriate to the perfection of human beings, we didn't realize that a comparable amount of deficiencies and primitivism is going on in other kingdom levels as well beneath the human kingdom. Like we know that the animal kingdom on this planet and the plant kingdom on this planet is as unhealthy and as primitive and undeveloped as the human kingdom is. In other words, it's the imbalances in the primitive nature is not limited to the human kingdom. We see that we've just recently recognized that the psychological, the mental, the physiological, the nutritionally, so forth, those same weaknesses can be observed at life levels right on down the line. Now, funny thing is that the next level is, in a sense, dependent upon the human kingdom to be the recipient of its information that will in turn cause the humans, as they are evolving upward, cause them to be the gardeners in improving the primitive nature of the lower life forms. And they will, as they pick information from the next level, improve the nutrition, improve the psychological environment, and so forth of lower life forms, so that all this will come together at once, so that when a human is about to reach the next level, what he would be consuming would be of a next to perfect element of consumption. In other words, it's all in line together. The primitive human has a primitive animal as its pet, and they all eat primitive food, and they're all primitive in their development. It's all moving in its change together, but the top kingdom level is responsible for the accelerated change of those lower kingdom levels. In other words, the next level gives them an unconscious responsibility of changing that. Can you see how that's happening? And all these scientists and botanists and so forth who are really determined to upgrade lower life forms and improvement, they have chosen to be servants of the next level in that way, and they just don't know it. They certainly didn't have to go sign as in the membership of the church in order to get served there. Well, we wanted to go more questions, so we could talk all night on one question. Then we won't get other questions. So can you take it?
One evening you mentioned that what you wanted to speak about was negative suffering. And we kind of got on other subjects, and once during the evening you gave one real example which to me was very subtle, and it could have been very easily blinded to, and that was 10 years of learning. But I was wondering if Link said intended to give more examples.
Next level mind wouldn't have even said 9 years, so many months, so many days, so many minutes, because that would almost carry with it a psychological attitude of, it's been, this time I've been counting the minutes, which would be in a sense a sarcastic, negative approach, where your next level mind would say, I really don't know. Now that you asked me, I'd have to think about it, because I don't know how long this is. That's what your next level mind would say. Only the vehicle is counting the months and the years, and so only the vehicle would come up to a year that hadn't even been reached yet to its completion.
What good can you get out of it by knowing how much? You still have tasks to do. That's if it takes 50.
No, it isn't. Not there. That word's not in the vocabulary.
But you understand what we mean? There's no sense in worrying about how long. The main thing is how fast can we do our task.
Well, I was wondering when the human infant is born, I believe on the page you said not too long ago that the human mind that enters when the cord is cut and it's the generator for the vehicle. What happens to the mind of the mother who, and I'm assuming that the mother's mind supported the infant while it was a fetus?
No, it didn't really. No, it was just a growing piece of machinery.
So in other words, didn't have a mind, or?
No. It had a mind only in the sense that every cell in it has a mind of its own, because it was just, if you think of, if you get the concept of the computer, of what humans now call a computer, and a robot, a mechanical robot that is programmed by computers, and you take the vehicle itself without a mind, without a separate mind, it has what has been programmed into it, just as a robot would have. Now, what has happened to the infant once mind moves in progression, it is moving into a robot that is flesh and bone and blood. It is moving into a programmed robot, but with a list of, the mind has with it a list of what it has previously experienced, and it is moving into a house that has the capacity for what it has not experienced, or certainly would be appropriate for the span of that generation, lifetime that is ahead, would certainly offer it a full program for what is ahead. So even at the outset, there becomes a bit of a conflict between the mind that is moving into the living vehicle that has, in a sense, a mind, like a computer has a mind. But it is a mind that only returns like tapes return. And it can return as far as it can join tapes and is programmable to
have conclusions based upon a compilation of tapes. Do you follow that? So, and we don't even know that it goes in like that as an infant. We don't know that it goes in as the cord is cut, or it might be a little later, or it might be a slow progression that mind enters it. You know, your mind, in other words, we can make some comparisons to how your mind had to enter to even at a lower level of how a human mind has to enter a vehicle. We're not saying that it all happens at once, because it might be mostly on the outside, and a little bit coming in, and a little bit coming in. Now, the funny thing is that we have recognized that there is some vehicles have a sense of being aware of their exterior mind and not knowing what it is, and almost like they're seeing someone else outside of them at times, even visually seeing. But not all vehicles would have that sense ability. And the ones who have it don't know what it is they're seeing, and there's no accuracy to it. But it's very possible that the mind of the human has a slow entrance into the vehicle. That the programming, it's like you could picture it like a blob of life, that enough enters it to sustain it and to bring it into its next lesson, and more and more comes in. Probably if all that mind was shoved into that brain at the instant the infant's cord was cut, it'd explode. It wouldn't know what in the world to do, and it would start talking immediately and start, doing all kinds of things.
I don't think the vehicle would be prepared for it to start talking
No.
or doing anything. In other words, I don't think the vehicle is mature enough to accept all of the brain at one time. It must come in very slowly.
All the mind at once.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I was wondering, another thing, like, let's say, several hundred years forward in evolution of the human kingdom, to where they've gone through the test tube baby business, but now they're actually producing babies in the lab rather than even have a mother carry them. The mind
Have a water womb in a machinery.
Right. The mind then would enter at whatever time it was appropriate for that.
Well, it would still do the same thing that
When it comes out of that water womb, it would enter then at the same time.
well, it would start entrance. It would only start as enough to plug it into to self-sustaining energy. In other words, it's the force that triggers the impulses of the plant that says, suck from your mother's breast, do the things that it needs. It triggers those things that's going to begin to sustain it. And then a little more mind comes in when the eyelids are open and the pupils begin to focus and so forth. It's a gradual process.
I would think by the time it was a certain age, I don't know what age it would be, but I would think by a certain age it would be in totally. Wouldn't you think?
What by puberty or
No, I think by
long before that?
Oh yes, I think both time they're 4 or 5 years old.
That's a good question. T and I'll think on it.
Because I've seen too many brats, and I don't think a little child with just a little mind would be that mean.
Well, but that could still be characteristics, genetic characteristics of brat that the mind doesn't have control of.
I don't know. We'll have to think about it. We'll think about it. Let's see. Get somebody on this side. Hey, Rudy?
If I remember correctly, on an earlier tape, we talked about how this society has been pretty much spoiled rotten because of all that they have, and because of our coming here, things had to be a certain way. And and that when we leave, there might be some hard times ahead for them in order to get them to be more appreciative of what they have. And I was curious to know if that were the case.
Well, let me stop you just 1 second, then go on with your question, because the hard times forces them to be kinder and better people, because they have to get something from others, and that it isn't premeditated, but they have. Getting some tunes I've never heard. What is this?
Everything to be careful. He put his notes together.
I haven't heard that thing. Okay, go ahead, Roy.
Well, I wasn't quite sure in my mind what all that meant as far as the kinds and the degree of change that might happen in this society. And I was wondering how it might affect their attitude towards exploration in space, because they seem to be at a point now where some parts of the society want to go forward with it, and others kind of
Well,
important that they get involved.
we think that probably the space exploration and all will continue. Now you're going to say, well, how's that going to continue if things are going to be harder? But there are ways. Like, we don't know what kind of hardships we're talking about, and it may not just be economical, and it may. We just simply don't know. We do know that people, when they have everything handed to them, it gives an opportunity for all the rottenness to really surface. But it also gives them a chance to deal with their own rottenness and make decisions about changing it, which they can still have a chance to change. And we also, and we do suspect that circumstances, but what those circumstances are going to be, we have no idea. That circumstances will return to give them a chance to better.
Example.
Our minds leave this atmosphere, and we kind of pull away a little bit, and that takes away a lot of knowledge and a lot of.
Turn the tape off. Get rid of Plato. Put him out.
Turn the tape back on.
Our minds leave this atmosphere, and that's what takes something away from the humans they've had that they use to develop the technology and all the things that they've developed up to this point.
No.
No, because you're not the ones that are teaching them this technology. Your task is something else.
Yeah. What you're leaving is deposited. You're making deposits, and that's part of why you don't have any more mind with you during the task, is because you're making deposits. And deposits at a level at which they are in a progression at which they can handle. You follow that? And even though we say get more mind in, it's because we want the progression to accelerate and increase. But the kind of things you're talking about, like technology, that's not coming from you. That's not coming from us. It's coming from another source altogether. It's coming from the next level. But funny thing is, certain things that we think that we were probably responsible or had some participation in being responsible for deteriorated a lot during the time of this work. And but there are a lot of areas that we don't even feel that we've had that we work in those labs at all, that other members of the next level are, and that we feel like that information will increase. And it was like our coming was simultaneous with, because the ones who designed it chose for it to be that way, was simultaneous with a great influx of advanced technology. In fact, we were preceded by it. Or let's say that if T and O took vehicles to a degree at their beginning, then a large amount of that was simultaneous with our coming. But some even preceded that to some degree. But from that period on, we feel like there are other workers in the next level that are doing a tremendous amount of work with this planet right now while we're here. Now, we're not saying that they are here, but we're saying that they are sending, whether it's transmissions or whatever it is, that we see evidence all the time, because we do not believe that it's just the blossoming of the human mind. We feel like that's ignorance to think that it is true that the human mind is blossoming to be a better receptacle of information, but that information, you could look at it and see how it coincided with this task, but it wasn't us, nor you.
The preoccupation that individuals have had with some things, in other words, people have been, by your work, have been sort of calmed down a little bit. And now they're getting into more of physical fitness, career-wise, health, improving the diet, and where you didn't have this prior to that because they were so involved in other things. So in a sense, you all have paved the way by doing your task in order for them to be more, to receive more from the next level. You've, in a sense, you've kind of purified them, even though they're far from being purified, but you've purified them enough so that they can receive more next level things.
You know,
understand it? I mean, not next level things, but I mean more advanced things for the human.
I feel like even that you could almost calculate it. I wish we had the capacity to accurately calculate it. But from the time that members of the class first were sent to have out-of-craft tasks, there started an influx of or less young people at that time who wanted to learn to be professional goof-offs. In other words, I don't know if you realize that, but just prior to out-of-craft tasks, the popular thing was, can we take a ride on food stamps? How can we take a free ride and not work? And we, at the time, weren't awake enough to see this. And so we didn't like the fact that you had to go take out-of-craft tasks. And now, since then, we have seen the favor you have done the society by taking them. Also, each time you took them, we said, you've got to upgrade, you've got to upgrade, it's got to be a little bit better. and they are, you read in the magazines now where the young people are obsessed with upgrading their careers, and they want success. And I'm afraid you're responsible to a large degree for that. And also, as we came in out of campgrounds and we moved less frequently, they became less nomadic and they settled down more and they stayed in areas more. And now they're like T says, they're more and more tamed to a degree, if you want to apply that term. And they're concentrating on their interpretation of what you have been sending them without even knowing that you were sending it to them.
In the U.S. News magazine that was out just recently, a couple of weeks ago, they had a picture about, an article about yuppies, which are the hippies who are now career-wise.
Ex-hippies, right.
Ex-hippies. And they had a picture of a couple, and they were dressed in nice, man in a suit and the woman in a nice suit. And she had on running
Fifth
shoes.
Avenue, New York.
She had on running shoes like you all wear, carrying her little briefcase. And I thought, well, that's, we've told you how we saw people walking, but it was like it's kind of like, see, there's your symbol right there, your shoes, what you've done. In a sense, you all have done, I feel like you have done considerably to upgrade people and to help them. Now, Erodi, you mentioned something about when we leave, when people suffer. I feel like people have suffered considerably since we have been here, and they still are, because there are
in different ways.
in many ways, and all you have to do is watch the news. And I'm not talking about the people over in Ethiopia, because I feel like that's a different experiment altogether. But in this nation, England, all over, you can just about see where things happen that can't help but cause you to suffer, even if you are indirectly involved with it. Do you know what I mean by that? In other words, people have developed an empathy for others, and they have if they see somebody worse off than they are, the good ones, right? And a lot of, just like this man who killed these teenagers, or shot these teenagers. I don't know if he killed them, but he shot them on this subway in New York. People volunteered to post his bail and to pay his lawyers and everything, because they, not that they were for his shooting these teenagers, but they didn't like what these teenagers were doing. Now, in my mind, if the teenagers saw how people responded to somebody shooting teenagers, I would be afraid to be one of those teenagers.
It's beginning. They are tired of the freedom that caused gangs, neighborhood gangs, and things to go rampant. They are tired of towns that accepted unlimited graffiti and unlimited vandalism, and they want to see it turn around. They really do. And you remember the little thing we told you about the Pasadena school, that where they were going to teach that improvement? We see that a lot of levels are indicating that they're really fed up with the way people have, with the attitude people have had toward one another. Now, you still see a lot of it, just like, a bad attitude toward people. You still see a lot of it because it went so rampant. And it's just like there's a giant movement, and it's a giant movement against smoking, but you still see a lot of it. And but people are speaking out. People don't hesitate to say, if someone says, "Do you mind if I smoke it?" "Yes, I do." And they don't. And more states and cities are passing laws prohibiting smoking in elevators, and requiring that restaurants divide their space into non-smoking. And some businesses are prohibiting smoking altogether during your work hours, unless you leave and go out to a smoke room or some place to smoke. But you still see a lot of smoking. And some people are almost smoking more because of the rebellion against that movement. They want to cling to that. "Oh, I don't care, I'm going to die of something, might as well be cancer." And yet they don't even mean it. They don't even think about it. It's just an unconscious rebellion. But T was expressing that there has been a lot of suffering. Now, there hasn't been much economic suffering in this society to really amount to much. And there's where a lot of this bad conduct came. But the funny thing is, we see almost, we don't know what this means, but we see things almost beginning to happen that we would expect to begin to see happen upon your exit. You see what we see things, awarenesses and change and all that we really didn't expect to see until we were gone. And so we're in the process of trying to understand how that's working. And it may be just because we weren't aware enough of what your homework, of the application of your homework, of what it would have, what influence it would have out there in their changes. I don't know if that makes sense.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Well, I have a question about
accepting a greater responsibility for our pulling, especially against frequency. And lately, there's been things that you said that have just, I don't know if it's bringing more mind to this vehicle, but that's the only word that I can really express it with, is just feeling greater responsibility for the task. And certainly, as I ask, what is the next step? And I seek to understand what things mean by accepting more responsibility for pulling. I'm not sure what to do with what comes into my consciousness. And I wonder, is it like attention or the short?
Well, see, you're doing exactly right if, as a result of this pulling, you're feeling more responsibility. And the only other thing that you can do is think deeper than you've been thinking, because it takes more mind to think deeper. And if your questions show a lot of deep thought, like because you're expressing the questions that have come into your mind, then you're doing exactly what we have asked. And I don't know about T, but I feel like the questions we're hearing from you have shown that you've been pulling, because those questions are a little bit deeper than questions frequently we've had in the past.
And believe it or not, we can feel the depth.
That's right.
I can feel
which
the
means
depth.
we're feeling a little bit more mind presence on this side of your vehicle instead of the other.
In other words, what you want to do is feel the responsibility, like you said, but also be aware of every opportunity you have to do your task.
Right. You don't want to just...
Don't let one pass you by.
Right.
One opportunity.
And you don't want to just be a reluctant, obedient student. Or, do you see what I'm saying? Because I'm not saying that you're reluctant, but you are reluctant. Every time your vehicle balks, it causes you to be reluctant. But then the mind comes in and says, now wait a minute, vehicle, you're not going to balk. I'm going to cooperate. I'm going to be obedient. I want to do what's expected of me. Well, that's not enough. Do you follow that? That's just simply not enough. Yeah, and when you know that it isn't enough, and you feel like when this task is completed is partially dependent upon what I do, my effort, my homework, with my strain and my thoughts and how I handle things I deal with daily and and I'm responsible for my contribution to this task, and I want it to be a significant contribution, and I don't want my teachers to have to whip it out of me. Do you see? I want to be a student. I want who is making it easy for the teachers, bringing it right to the fore. It's not that you're coming up with ideas. It's that you're taking an urgency and responsibility, and therefore, as you go about the job that you're doing, 24 hours a day, you're saying, now wait a minute. If I goof off here and let my vehicle get away with this or that, or if I'm lazy and mentally or physically, I'm just slowing the work down. And no matter what I'm dealing with, it's the effort that I apply to what I'm dealing with that is going to indicate that I'm taking responsibility, that I'm doing my part. Do you follow that? It's the effort in change. It's the effort in bringing in next level mind. It's the effort applied in depth and all that is going to push this thing faster and get you back in better state. You want to be pleased when you step aboard the spacecraft. You want to see them pleased that with the assignment that you got in a vehicle that had X number of deficiencies and Tolodi, I think you're pretty close to needing to stand up. Well, I don't know, your eyelids are kind of heavy, but work on them a little bit. It wouldn't hurt to stand over there with that study for a minute. You want to feel, and you want them to feel that the combination of mind with problems of vehicle, you made the most of. You follow that? That you made the most of. And there a big underlining most of. Because that's what it's all about, making the most of what you, of the package of your tools. And that's the package of your tools, right there.
It's like a graft, a graph, I mean. You try to get so much upward swing on the graph. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
In other words, it's as you donate more of your time, the graph moves up, to where you are up exactly where you're supposed to be.
And it's not just time. It's
the effort.
It's strength. It's strength that's your.
Every circumstance. Every circumstance. If you're doing the crystal glasses in there, and someone says something to you, and you've come back with some smart remark, that opportunity has been lost. Absolutely lost. And you have failed your strain by doing it.
You cannot recover that time. You cannot recover. You can work the fastest you can work would be getting the most out of your tool. You see what I'm saying? So when you're not working that well, you can't recover it. You can move it. You can pause a bit. You can decide to move faster. You see what we're saying? But you can't recover it. It really can't be recovered. Now, it's like you're in the exercise room, even though we don't let you exercise this way. Or we don't encourage you to. We hope you don't. But let's say that you were lifting weight, and you had 10 repetitions at a certain weight, and then you upped it, and it took a lot of strength to up it to 12, and then to 14, and then 16, and then and your muscles began to give way, even under it, because in a sense your vehicles don't handle your forward motion too well, and some of the plugs just come right out of the dike, and as your effort increases. And then the task comes, well, part of my task is what I do with the vehicle, and it's responding that way. That's part of my task, because it's not as simple as I can continue to up the weight and apply the energy, and muscles get bigger and bigger, and I win. It's not that simple. It becomes bionic, because in the process, half of the, and it does become bionic, because half of the muscles fall apart. And it's what kind of ingenuity you're going to put into mechanism to make it bionic progression beyond that point. Do you follow that?
For about 2 weeks, and especially this last week, I've been feeling a real strong urgency to get this vehicle's mind to pulling, to understanding what we're doing when we're pulling, because it's going to be responsible for pulling when it gets into the next vehicle again, and so on up the line. And it's like I've been talking to it like a student, saying that you've accepted this responsibility, and the things that you're going to be doing are going to be important to your strain and to the generations to come. But you have to understand that it isn't going to come easy, that it's got to be this effort that it takes to pull your new mind into your new vehicle. And I don't know if that's off the track.
Okay, no, but it's more important that I please the one who gave me the assignment.
Yes.
That's more important than.
To please your Heavenly Father, is what
Yeah.
you call it.
But let's put it in the one who gave me the assignment, because I'm sorry, my whole vehicle responds on too spiritual level if I put it in my Heavenly Father.
Okay.
So.
You don't know it, but it was your Heavenly Father. Okay.
Yeah, but the point is that I want this is a temporary task, right? And I'm not as concerned, even though they are concerned with the benefit the garden gets as a result of this. I'm not that concerned. I'm more concerned about the person who assigned me to this task, about doing the task.
Yes.
Do you follow that? So anytime you start thinking about your responsibility to the humans, I'm sorry, you don't have any. You don't. They have. They. No. I'm not talking to you, Presto. I'm taking what you said as an opportunity to preach a sermon here. Okay.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at something else I'm thinking.
But it is important that all of you realize your responsibility is not to this world. Your responsibility is to that world. Your responsibility is to the next level. And they have chosen to send you in order to accelerate growth on this planet. It's their plan. You don't even know what their plan is. And you can't even participate in the motivation of why they're doing it. You see, what you don't, because you didn't even know what it was. Your whole job is hopefully to do what you were sent to do, and to when you get back, that they'll be pleased as of the outcome and as a result of your effort. That's really, and it's that clinical. Now, you're going to get more mind in as you force your vehicle to look at that clinically. Yeah, that will indicate, because as we see more mind, as we demonstrated in you, it's when we see you and hear the words you choose and see the kind of maturity coming from what you say and your actions that indicate that you are moving into a consciousness of seeing your task in a more clinical manner, as an assignment from a laboratory, and you don't want your tools to hold you back, and that the task requires a constant plugging up and patching and band-aiding and spanking and so forth of your tool package, because it's a living creature.
Every time you say we've got to bring more mind in, I keep trying to understand exactly what it is, what mind. It's like, have we gone through a stage of recall of our mind to the next level, procedures, ways of the next level, and then when we pull in more mind, is that mind that we're building, or it's not mind that we've already had, it's mind that we're building?
It's maturity that you're pulling in. It's understanding that you're pulling in. It's recall, because as you are pulling in as Pam Odie pulls more of Pam Odie in, she sees her tool package and her task more objectively, and thereby can handle all of its facets more objectively. And those facets become more complex as we proceed. They become complex and they compound. But the more your mind comes in, the more you, it's like you get taller and you get older, or in wisdom or in maturity. And you're looking at it differently. That's the only thing I can think of.
But in a sense, it's just what you remembered at the next level. If it's easier to understand it, then you're bringing your mind from your next level mind into this vehicle. And you're not building another mind. You're just bringing it in, which is like Doug described it, it's remembering, recalling, and because you all have that memory bank that you need to use.
Do you get confused as to how the task is causing you to build experiences as against how next level mind is coming in on recall?
Well, I think my question is like we've come to do this task, but the first time we've done this task and we're learning on this task, a new experience, and what we draw in isn't something that we already knew, it's actually something that we're learning, so when it...
No,
or-
no.
or-
What you're drawing in is what you have known.
What you know, okay.
And because the more you learn, the more you're able to draw in. It's like if a little bit of your mind comes in and gets and learns certain things that only it could have learned in this tool package, and then it has assimilated those things, and it has the tool package under control, then it's ready to bring in some more. Not control perfect, but under more control than it had, because each is a step and a step and a step. Now, the funny thing is, the more you bring in, and it becomes complex, you see the vehicle responding in ways at times that it never even responded before. The more you bring in next level mind, because it's almost short circuits areas that were never threatened before. You didn't even know they were there. Or you might have had areas return that you thought you had plugged long ago, and they were totally under control, and all of a sudden the cork flies out and they're wide open again. But and in a sense, all that is to your favor. All that is for your sake, because the task is developing. Now, this is still just using human words, which aren't really worth a darn, but it's to develop strength. It's like, and you can't judge the strength. You can't say, well, if I'd been strong, I wouldn't have had to deal with this, and I wouldn't have had to deal with that, and I would have had the vehicle all under control in this way and that. And that's ignorant. That's childish thinking. Because the more next level mind comes in, the more certain areas might appear to be under control, and they might stay under control, and they may not, because you've got a plant here, a piece of machinery here that you can't anticipate how it's going to respond as more mind comes in. But each time it has a seeming malfunction or awkward response to more mind, it gives you more opportunity to develop the whole purpose of your whole purpose for coming with strength, right? Next level had some other purposes, but your whole purpose was developing strength. You understand that? In the process of your developing strength in order to be a better servant for them, they're using you to do something for the garden. But your whole purpose is developing strength. So no matter what your vehicle does, or no matter what you deal with harmonically, or with the chromosomes, or with the genes, or with your strains, or anything else, no matter how difficult that gets, it's to your advantage. And therefore you can't ever accept a position of, I must be getting worse at my task, or this wouldn't be happening, or that wouldn't be happening. So when something happens and it's a surprise to you and you think you've been trying to do your best, you say, uh-oh, I'm looking at this wrong. Let's say even for a given period of time you lose control of an area that you once had, you thought, fairly good control of. And you're doing your best even during that period, and you think your head's going to explode because you say, what happened? I used to have control of this area. And I'm applying the same effort I was applying when I used to have control. Now, for that given period of time, while it appears to be that way, you're sending out some very special signals to your strength. Do you follow that? And you are also refusing to accept it as a permanent condition. You are saying, I'm not going to tolerate this, and the next day it's still there. I am not going to tolerate it, and the next day it's still, and you continue. You don't ever start accepting it. Now, as long as you maintain that frame of mind and you are determined to not let it get you down, you are doing what you were sent to do. You are developing strength. And if the machinery begins to fall down in the process, it's so what? I'm not going to throw out my task because the machinery is acting up on me. You see,
can you all tune into this? Because it's very important that you tune into it. And pretty soon, things that used to be significant to you in ways of the machinery, your new tact is, your new likely successful tact with certain areas is to consider them insignificant. And you're simply hunting, for the moment, a better plug for the dike. Do you see what we're saying? And you're going to find it, and it's going to be one that was a lot better than the one I had before. And as long as you maintain that, you're doing your homework. And when that plug gets, about the time that plug, you find the new successful plug for that area, another one will blow. Because as long as you are here, even though it may not be obviously that a plug is blown, but as long as you are here, your purpose has to be accomplished. And that is developed.